welcome to another episode of Potato Poker. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking to yourself, my goodness, something doesn't seem right. This guy's a dork and he's using a dumb voice. You're actually wrong. This is a brand new microphone, and this is how my voice normally sounds. So, get used to it. This is the real Kacalek. Okay, guys, let's get into the episode. And let's talk through some hands. There were a ton of them. There were some really good ones, and I'm excited to share them with you. Let's go. Well, we start this one off right. We've got pocket queens in the small blind. There's been a limp in front of us, and so I make it 16 pre-flop, and the big blind and the limper both end up calling. So we go to a flop three ways, and the flop is pretty decent. It is 5, 6, 8 with 2 hearts. Now, I feel okay about this flop with my queens, but I do bet small. I bet 15, and the reason I do that is because this flop favors the calling range. My opponents have the 2-pair combos, the sets and the straights. I am not going to have them very often. But when the turn comes down, a beautiful queen of clubs, we suddenly shift from, playing this pot to get a small amount of value from worse to hoping we can build this pot into something significant and go for some major value on the river. So I bet up to $45 this time on the turn, and we get snap called by the big blind. So very good news. Now when we get to the river is the ace of diamonds, and that card favors our range more than his, but the way he's playing makes it seem as though he maybe doesn't have like a monster hand. He could. I haven't played with him before. When you move that quickly, a lot of times moving that fast doesn't mean that you necessarily have it. It's more that you're trying to show strength, so there's not a big bet. So what I'm going to do, since he most likely has a condensed range, is I'm going to bet really big and have him try to bluff catch. So I go ahead and bet $150 on this river, almost the whole pot. And I'm going to let you listen to what he had to say on how he's feeling in this moment.
I either just sucked out on you really hard, or you just made yourself $150 that you shouldn't have made. Guess we're going to find out.
We end up hitting one of the absolute best cards in the deck. The 5 would have been a little bit better, but the ace is great. He ends up paying us off, and we started this session off right with a nice little win. All right, guys, we've got Juicy J's. We're on the cutoff for hand number 2, and we're against the same opponent who, in my opinion, is probably a little tilting right here. We make it $20. He makes it $55 on the button, and I decide to call. In retrospect, I think I probably should jam. My thought process was, if he really is tilting, there's going to be a lot of times where we just go to a flop and he sticks in the remaining money. He's only got 120 behind, and if he is steaming, he might make a mistake. In retrospect, I think I should just be 4-betting 100% of the time here. I'll be happy to take away $55 without seeing a flop with jacks. And if he does have us, either way, we're probably getting all the money in. So we go to a flop, and the flop comes out King 3-7 rainbow. And watch how quick his chips go in. I check to him, and his chips are immediately in the center. So let's watch that one more time. Rewind it back. All right, so notice that I check, and those chips are immediately in there. Boom! They're just immediately cuts them out. So he shoves those chips in really fast, which, let's think about it. If you had kings or like a monster hand, you would at least consider with a set of kings, or I think even with aces, you would take a second and just go, what should I bet here? Am I all in, or do I want to make a smaller bet, try to get some more value? So I think you're going to be doing this with aces and ace-king some of the time, and then you're going to be doing it with a lot of bluffs. Now, he also takes the time, when I don't ask for a count, he goes ahead and cuts all his chips out. That's an unusual thing, and usually, I think, at least, you're trying to show someone, look how much money this is, you don't want to call this. So for those reasons, I just don't believe his story, and I decide I'm going to make the call. Now, we call, and we get shown that he has the ace-10. We've got to hold. I don't recall the 2 cards that run out, but the board does hold. We are clean, and we end up scooping this pot as well. I think, again, I should be jamming pre-flop. I didn't. It does end up working out. That doesn't mean it's the right play, but obviously we're grateful that we are stacking the chips. I think either way, if I would have shoved, we would have had the same result. Next hand that I have for you is an interesting one. It is the ace-8 of clubs, and I make it $15 pre-flop. I get 3 callers, and we are going 4 ways to a flop. This time the flop's going to come down with 2 clubs, so a 5 of clubs, queen of clubs, 9 of spades. So we've got the nut flush draw, we've got 2 opponents that check to us, and I'm going to go ahead and bet $20. I will do this with a queen, with sets, with overpairs, so I have quite a bit of value that I can do this with, and I continuation bet for $20. The player who is the main villain in this hand in the cutoff, straight across from me here, decides that $80 is a better amount to play for. So he's going to go ahead and raise, and I'm fine with this raise. I'm going to make the call. I have the chance, if I hit the club here, to take all of his chips. He will do this with hands like a set of 5s, set of 9s, maybe a bad like queen 9 for a 2-pair. Probably not going to have 5-9. He'll also do it with some draws, so things like jack 10, especially if they're suited, jack 10 of clubs, jack 10 of spades, 6-7, 6-8, anything like that where they have a flush draw plus a straight draw. You can definitely take this line. So I'm going to call. I'm going to stick around. There's a chance my ace high is good right now. There's also just the possibility of hitting our flush and then getting paid. So I go ahead and make the call. We see the turn, which is the 6 of diamonds. And the 6 of diamonds is not bad. If he's drawing, if he's got a made hand, we may be folding. But he checks back almost immediately when I check to him. And so now when we get to the 3 of hearts on the river, I suddenly don't feel like he's going to have value hands very often here. I mean, he should be betting 2 pairs, sets, all that. And if he has a queen, it's now a weak queen. He's not going to do this with a good queen in this spot. Because that causes his range to be really condensed and full of a lot of hands that are not willing to call a big bet, this is a good spot to polarize. It doesn't really make sense based off of hand reading for him to have like a really good hand and to decide to check back on the turn after he raised and I called. So I go ahead and bet pot. I bet $220, and I'm expecting him to fold pretty quick. But instead he decides he's going to think about this one. So maybe he has the queen, but it's not that good. Maybe he has something like 6-7 or 6-8 where he's made a pair. Maybe he has like king 9 of clubs. And I'm just thinking to myself, stop thinking, just let it go. Ultimately, he decides to fold. And we are A-okay with that result. We're going to take down this pot with the bluff. Whew! Had to hold our breath for a second, though. Well, he thought about it. In this next hand, it's a couple orbits later, and we get red kings. There's a raise to $12 from a very solid player that I've played with a fair amount, and then a small blind call in between. We're in the big blind. I make it $65, and both of the players decide to call. So pretty big pot to start, and the flop comes down with a bunch of undercards. So really good flop for us. We've got an overpair. Neither player should be hitting this board super hard. The things that we're going to be able to get value from are pocket pairs, maybe like an ace-7, heart draws, things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and make a bet of $110. My hope is that we can get a player who has something like 8s through probably 10s that might be calling, or those heart draws, something like an ace, queen of hearts. Maybe like ace-10 of hearts, any of those kinds of flush draw hands, so we have a chance to get some value from them. So I go ahead and make that. I get one caller, and it's that middle position player who is fairly tough. So the pot now grows from 207 to 427. We see the 7 of spades on the turn, and it's actually a pretty good card for us. It means that we're not really too worried about a set of 7s, which would have been like the only thing we're really super concerned with. Our opponent shouldn't have aces very often, if at all, because he did not choose to re-raise pre-flop. And so I'm going to go ahead and bet. I bet all in, put some chips in my cards, and now it's all in, and he does decide to fold. We almost have a stacked pot ratio of 1-to-1, and so I think that's a fine play. This hand is a couple orbits later. I get dealt pocket kings again, and I raise pre-flop. We go to a flop, which is king, queen, 7. Feeling fantastic about where I'm at. I down bet to $15, so I'm betting about a third of the pot. Hoping to get a caller. The opponent straight across from me starts cutting out some chips I can see out of my peripheral, and they're debating a nice big raise. they get it all lined out and ultimately chicken out and throw the cards in the middle. So does the other player. They both fold. It's a terrible feeling that they almost went for it. I don't think I gave away any information, but who knows. Anyway, we won that one, but unfortunately it wasn't a better pot. All right, guys, Jack 9 of hearts for this next one. We raised to $12. We get 2 callers, and this is a great hand to talk through some concepts. All right, I'm going to show you a couple things from this book in this next hand about hand reading and how you can use it. All right, I'm the pre-flop aggressor in this one, so when it comes down king 4-3 with 2 hearts, I'm going to continue. The king favors my range, and I bet $20 into 36. I'd be happy to take this down now. When you're betting a smaller flush rather than a bigger one, you're more content to take the pot down than actually try to realize that equity. If I had ace high, I think you could even size down a little bit, but I think this is a fine play either way. You could make this bet with ace high as well. All right, so we've got the Jack 9, and we get both players to call. So nobody re-raised me pre-flop, so I'm not expecting any monster hands. And I think, a lot of times they're going to also have a flush draw, maybe have a bad king, maybe have, with that price, maybe like something, a middling pair, like 5s through 9s, something like that. So when the turn comes down, the 7 of spades, I'm just going to check. I'm going to allow them to set the price, and hopefully we can get to the river and either try to make a pair or try to make our flush. It checks back very quickly and gets all the way through. And now we see a 3 of diamonds, and the small blind again just chooses to check to us. I don't know what value hands they can really have here that they're going to call once and then check twice. So I'm going to go ahead and bet $80. I should be able to make this bet if I have a strong king or if I have something like ace 3, which is possible in my range. And I just don't think when they've checked twice that they're going to be calling very often for $80. So we're expecting them to have some garbage and maybe to show up. We might get called by like a weak king, and that's definitely a possibility. There are 2 flush draws out there that could have missed. So this is a spot I wouldn't always choose to bluff, but based off of their actions, I feel good about it until they move all in. So both players go all in, and we have kings full, pocket kings that did not raise pre-flop, made a boat, and a straight that came on the turn and got checked all the way through. So, hope that helped. Guys, I have to apologize for this next one. My camera was not working, or I fat-fingered it, or something, but I messed something up here to where I don't have footage of this hand, but I still want to recount it for you because it was an interesting one. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to put this graphic up, and I'm going to invite you to join the DOS, become a disciple of Spud, join our community, and make sure you're catching these videos as they come out. All right, that graphic will be in place of some sweet poker footage. So pretend that you can see all this. Imagination's active. Here we go. All right, so anyway, we see the flop on this one with 4 players. We have top pair, open ender, and we check. It goes back to the original pre-flop raiser who ends up checking back. And so when it goes to the turn, and the turn is the 7 of hearts, I've made a straight, I bet $35. So I'm making a pretty small bet, and he raises to 75. So no action pre-flop, no action on the flop, and now with this, when the 7 comes out, he's pretty interested. So, I mean, occasionally, I suppose it's possible he could have slow played us on the flop with something big and is now trying to get value, but most likely this 7 has improved him, and we're in a spot where we're chopping. It's not going to be often that he has queen 8 raising under the gun. So what are we worried about? We're really worried about king queen. Otherwise, we're pretty content. He makes a very small raise, and so I'm not going to get away from that for that small of a price. So I do call the $75 raise, and we go to the river, which is the 5 of clubs. Doesn't really change anything, and now I check to him since he took the aggressive action on the turn, and he decides that it's time to go all in. So he bets all in. I tank for quite a while trying to determine where he's at, but ultimately decide that it's going to be pretty rare that he raises pre-flop and then decides not to bet the straight on the flop. Reason being that he can get value from so many hands with 4 players. There's really no reason to check back and be deceptive. you should be going for value with the straight there. So I think most of the time he's going to have something like ace-8, maybe 9-8, something along those lines where we're just chopping this pot, and he's trying to push me off of it so he can take the whole thing. Ultimately, I make the call, and unfortunately, he did choose to slow play king-queen offsuit and had the bigger straight, so we do end up losing this one. I still don't think I made a bad decision here. I think this is the correct play. I think it's actually a very big mistake on his part to not make the bet on the flop.
Hey everybody, 12:30 in the morning. Just finished up the first session of the week at Quest. Played for 9.5 hours. My goal was to put in about 10. I'm not sure how I feel about the mandatory hours. I tell you, it is counter to what I have learned and practiced in the past. And I'm not sure how I feel about it. I probably would have walked away from the table about 2.5 hours earlier had I not been thinking about putting in hours. Just based off of how it was going, usually if I am card dead for 2 hours or so, or just really falling apart for 2 hours, I will tend to walk away so that I don't go on tilt or make bad decisions. I don't feel like I went on tilt. I don't think I was making bad plays or bad decisions like way out of line tonight. What I do feel like is that I was there a little bit mentally fatigued, a little bit more than I should have been. And just maybe not playing my A game. I don't know. I don't feel like I made any egregious errors, but I stayed at the table for probably another 2.5 hours, basically card dead. So we started the night up $950. So bought him for $300, had $1250 in the stack, and gave it back on a couple. There were a couple of big hands that took some chips away, but then just card dead for almost 4 hours. I don't know that I won a hand. I don't know that I won a hand for about 3 or 4 hours. And it was pretty miserable. I would have walked away earlier just to avoid tilt and just to avoid being in that spot. So, not sure. This is day one of thinking about hours. The rest of the week, I've got a game tomorrow night. I don't know how long I'll play, but probably not 10 hours. I also, part of this process I hadn't really thought about is how much, I'm putting in hours editing and not thinking about how much that's going to cut into my play. So I don't know. I may need to find a different balance. I definitely feel like the 9 to 10 hour session after a morning of editing for 3 to 4 hours, or I don't remember how exact, maybe 4. Yeah, I think about 4 hours this morning. I mean, that makes for a pretty long day. I'm working 14.5 hours so far, not including commute time and all that. So I don't know. I don't know what that's going to be like in the future, but I'll tell you, it feels like a giant loss. We book a win of $267. So in for 300, out for 567. Not a horrible session, but it feels like I lost. I spent, like I said, about 4 hours dead just card dead at the table, giving chips up slowly, and then went from a profit of $950 down to a profit of $267. So feels like a big loser, but in the end, all in all, we booked a win and we can't complain. So we've got 3 more sessions this week. We've got lots of poker ahead. I will touch base with you again tomorrow. We've got more editing and some errands to run with the family, time with the kids, a workout, and then off to an evening game at the Pearl. So I will catch up with you then. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.
Time of my life.